The early winter wind blew through the rustling pines, carrying the smell of wood smoke and the sweet scent of dried apples hanging on the porch. The village of Whisper Creek was nestled on a small stream, nearly 20 miles from town. Time seemed to slow down there, foggy mornings, late afternoons with long sunsets over the yellow cornfields. In the old wooden house at the end of the dirt road, Caleb, a 13-year-old boy with messy brown hair and hazel eyes, sat by the window, watching the first snowflakes of the season fall silently. Outside, the old windmill still turned slowly, rattling to the rhythm of the wind. In the kitchen, his mother, Martha, stirred a pot of potato soup with a worn wooden ladle. "Bring in some more wood, Caleb, it's cold tonight," she said, her voice sad but gentle. Caleb nodded, pulled on a thick sweater, and went outside. He carried a small bundle of firewood, his hands red from the cold. From afar, one could hear the babbling of the stream and the howling of the wind through the bare tree trunks. That small village had only about 30 households. Most of them were farmers and carpenters. Everyone was hardworking, living a quiet and sincere life. But since Caleb's father, Robert, a gentle carpenter, died in a forest accident 2 years ago, their family had become more difficult than ever. Martha had to take on the job of renting clothes and making cakes for the town restaurant. Caleb, though still young, also helped his mother with everything: chopping wood, mending chicken coops, and carrying water from the well. Occasionally, he would sit and watch the stream flowing through the rocky beach where his father had taught him to throw pebbles, then smile sadly. If my father were still here, he would probably say, "Son, the wind is cold, light a fire to warm your heart first." That winter came early and harshly. Snow covered the roofs. The cornfields were left with only dry, broken stubble. Many families in the village had to share bundles of firewood and cans of beans. One afternoon, Caleb and his kind old neighbor, Mr. Harris, went to the stream to collect rotten wood. Mr. Harris was hunched over, his beard as white as silk, his hands trembling, but he still tried to load the wood onto the cart. "Boy, your father helped me build this little bridge," he said, pointing to the curved wooden bridge over the stream. "He said that bridges are not just for crossing rivers, but for connecting hearts." Caleb was silent. He looked at the wooden bridge, its paint peeling, its ropes worn. A flash of memory came back. His father smiled, rolled up his sleeves, gave him nails and a hammer, and taught him to hammer the first planks. "All good things, my son, begin with a pair of hands that know how to share." The boy pursed his lips, clenched his fists, and felt a small fire in his heart. That night, as Caleb and his mother were eating a simple dinner, the wind howled outside.
The windows creaked.
Suddenly, there was a loud knock on the door. Martha was startled. "Who's coming at this hour?" Caleb went to open the door, and he saw a little girl about 8 years old, shivering in the cold wind. Her coat was soaked, and she was holding a kitten that was meowing weakly. "I got lost from my mother," the little girl sobbed. "My mother told me to wait at the windmill, but it's snowing so hard." Martha quickly pulled the little girl in, wrapped her in a blanket to keep her warm, and put the pot of soup on the table. Caleb quietly took an old towel to wipe the cat, his eyes filled with sympathy.
"What is your name, little one?"
"Lily," she said, her voice as small as a breath. That night, they did not sleep. By the fire, Caleb told stories about his father, and Lily told stories about her mother, who was working on a farm near town. Outside, the snow was still falling. But in the small cabin, the fire was bright, and laughter rang out in the cold winter night. The next morning, Caleb decided to go find Lily's mother. He put on his coat, put on his hat, and brought some bread and a jug of water. His mother held his hand and said,
"Sometimes you can't do big things.
But if you do small things with all your heart, that's a miracle."
The boy smiled.
And then in the white snow, that small figure disappeared down the road leading to town. The story of Whisper Creek begins that day, the day a poor boy, in the bitter cold of winter, carried within him the fire of kindness. That morning, the sun had barely risen above the mountains when Caleb left. He carried a small cloth bag with only a few slices of dry bread, a jug of water, and the woolen scarf his mother had knitted last year. His mother saw him off to the gate, her eyes red with worry.
"Don't go too far, Caleb.
The snow is fierce, and you're not a grown-up." "I know, Mom. But Lily would be worried if I were you."
You have to find her."
Martha could only watch her son's figure disappear down the white road. He was small in the vast landscape, but his gait was strong, as if there was a fire inside him strong enough to withstand the winter. The road to Crowford Farm, where Lily said her mother worked, was nearly 8 miles from Whisper Creek. Normally, it was just a gentle trail, following the stream and passing through a small forest. But today, the snow was thick, the wind was howling, and the sky was as gray as lead. Caleb bowed his head and walked slowly. Each step sank deep, leaving small footprints in the white snow. He huddled in his coat, but the cold wind still penetrated, stinging his face. Halfway through, he stopped under an old pine tree. There was an old hut there, a place where villagers used to rest while chopping wood. Caleb lit a fire, warmed his hands, and pulled a small piece of bread from his pocket. He divided it in half for himself, half for Lily if they ever saw each other again. At that moment, he suddenly heard a noise, a soft whimper. Caleb turned around, straining his ears. In the corner of the hut, there was a skinny dog, its fur soaked, shivering from the cold.
Hey, little one. Caleb whispered, moving closer.
The dog looked at him with fear, but when he held out his hand, it timidly came closer, resting its head on his knee.
You must be hungry too, ou?
Caleb broke off a piece of bread and held it out. The dog ate it, then curled up by the fire, breathing softly. He smiled. From now on, you'll come with me.
I'll call you Snow, because you're white as snow.
And so, Caleb continued his journey, no longer alone. The afternoon was falling, and the wind was getting colder. He was nearing Crowford Farm, but ahead of him was a small frozen stream. Caleb stopped and looked around. The wooden bridge had broken away. Only the old planks remained, half buried in the ice. We have to get across snow, he said, clenching his fists. He tried to take a step onto the ice.
It cracked slightly, making a small crack.
Caleb took a deep breath and continued.
But halfway up the stream, the ice split open.
In a moment, he only had time to push the dog onto the bank before falling into the icy water. The first sensation was pain, like 1,000 needles stabbing into his flesh. He struggled, trying to swim to shore, but his clothes were heavy. Snow barked loudly, ran along the ice, then dove down and pulled him with her teeth on his sleeve. Finally, with all his remaining strength, Caleb grabbed a tree root and crawled to shore. He lay panting, his whole body shaking. "Good job, Snow, you saved me," he whispered. He lit a fire, dried his clothes, and watched the flickering flames reflected in the snow. In that moment, he remembered his father's words.
When you do good, you are never alone.
Because goodness always finds a way back. As night fell, Caleb saw a light in the distance, a small house, smoke rising from the chimney. He and Snow approached and knocked on the door. A middle-aged woman opened the door, her face haggard but her eyes kind. "Goodness, what are you doing here in the snow?" she asked, pulling him inside.
You're Lily S. Franc.
"Is her mother here?" The woman paused, then tears fell freely. "My daughter, is she okay?" Caleb smiled, though his lips were blue from the cold. "Yes, she's at home, safe."
I came to tell you.
The woman, Mary, hugged him tightly. They both cried, not from the cold, but from relief. She quickly put on her coat, preparing to return to the village with Caleb that night. But a blizzard had broken out, and the wind was strong. They were forced to stay overnight. In the simple wooden house, the firelight illuminated the faces of 2 people, a woman exhausted by life, a poor boy with a bright heart. The next morning, the storm had passed. The sky was clear, the sun shining weakly on the icy surface. Caleb and Mary set off back to Whisper Creek, Snow at their side, her tail wagging gently. The village appeared in the distance, blue smoke rising from the roofs. Lily stood by the stream, running toward her mother.
She burst into tears, hugging Marie.
Martha stood beside her, tears streaming down her face. She looked at her son, her eyes filled with pride.
You did it, Caleb.
The boy smiled, a gentle but energetic smile. That evening, the villagers gathered at the small chapel on the hill. Everyone had brought some food, a few bundles of firewood, something everyone had been short of this winter. They sat around the fire, telling the story of Caleb walking through the snowstorm to save people. Mr. Harris said slowly, his voice warm.
The miracle is not far away.
It is in the heart of a child who dares to walk, though the road is snowy and cold. All was silent. Outside, the snow was falling lightly. But in that small village, the warm fire of human love was burning brighter than ever. Spring was slow to arrive in Whisper Creek. The snow had just melted, the ground was still moist, but the sky was less gray. The drops of water on the tree branches reflected the early sunlight, sparkling like thousands of tiny crystals. The stream, which had frozen in the harsh winter, now trickled, carrying a clear sound like a child's laughter. Caleb sat by the stream bank, next to his dog Snow. He threw a small pebble into the water, watched the ripples spread, and said softly, "Dad, the bridge is broken, but I'll rebuild it. I promise." The wooden bridge his father had built years ago was now just a rotting skeleton. Half the bridge had been washed away by the snow this past winter, and broken planks were scattered along the bank. The villagers now had to walk a 3-mile detour to get to the other side of the stream, where there were fields, a church, and ancestral graveyards. In the boy's eyes, it was not just a bridge, but a memory, a thread connecting the hearts of the village. That evening, Caleb sat with his mother and Mary in the small kitchen. Mary, after reuniting with her daughter Lily, had decided to stay in Whisper Creek, helping Martha bake and sew for hire. "Mary," Caleb hesitated, "if you have any old wood, can you lend me some? I want to repair the bridge." Mary looked at him, surprised.
The bridge is almost broken. Son.
"It's not easy." "I know," Caleb replied, his eyes shining with determination. "But your father once said, if a bridge breaks, people must work together to rebuild it. Because when we do, we not only connect two banks, we connect trust." Martha looked at her son, a quiet smile appearing. "If you really believe, I will help you. We are not rich, but we have hands." The next day, the news spread throughout the village.
Little Caleb want to rebuild the bridge.
Someone said at the market, "A bridge? What can he do at this time of year?" Someone else shook his head. "He's still young, he's just daydreaming." But then, one by one, people began to change. Mr. Harris, the old farmer, brought some old planks from the cowshed. Mrs. Lucy from the village entrance gave a roll of rope. The children brought hammers, rusty nails, and pieces of wood they found by the stream. When Caleb arrived at the bridge early in the morning, he didn't expect to see nearly 10 people standing there, wearing thick coats and holding tools. Mr. Harris patted him on the shoulder. "You said you needed help, right? Well, today, Whisper Creek will do it with you." The boy paused, then smiled, a smile so bright that the spring wind seemed to stop. The work began.
The sounds of saw and hammers mixed with the sounds of the stream.
Caleb, despite his young age, worked as hard as anyone else. Whenever someone was tired, he would scoop up water from the stream and offer it to them, or tell a funny story that made everyone laugh. Mary and his mother brought out apple pies and shared them with the group. The children ran around, picking up fallen nails and carrying small planks. One afternoon, a sudden downpour began. Everyone took shelter under a tin roof. Mr. Harris sat by and sighed. "My father and I used to stand here and say that this bridge would help the whole village survive many floods. Now, looking at you, I see his image again." Caleb lowered his head, the rain mixed with his tears, but no one noticed. "I just want to do what my father never finished." 3 weeks later, the bridge was completed. Not as big or as sturdy as the bridge in town, but more beautiful than any other construction, because it was built with the hearts of the people. On the day of its inauguration, the villagers gathered in large numbers by the stream.
Andriten Baneogne, Whisper Bridge, connecting shore, connecting hearts.
Mr. Harris handed Caleb his father's old hammer, a keepsake he had kept for the past 2 years. "Here, it was your father's.
Now it's yours.
Keep it, and remember that true miracles are not in wood or stone, but in the heart that believes in good." The boy tightened his grip on the hammer, then gently tapped the bridge pillar 3 times. The sound echoed far and wide, spreading throughout the space, like the heartbeat of the village beating strongly again after a long winter. That afternoon, when everyone had left, Caleb sat alone on the bridge, snow lying beside him. The clear water reflected the pale pink sky. He said softly, "Dad, the bridge is finished. But I think, the most beautiful thing is not this bridge, but that everyone worked together to build it. Just like the miracle you said, when people are sincere, miracles will appear." Snow wagged her tail and laid her head at his feet.
In the distance, the church bell rang out, echoing through the spring breeze.
In Whisper Creek that day, A miracle had truly happened, not from the sky, but from the hearts of men. Summer came faster than usual. Whisper Creek seemed to come alive again after a long winter. Wildflowers bloomed along the roadside, cornfields were green, and children's laughter echoed across the lawns. Whisper Creek, after the thaw, was clear and gentle, flowing slowly under the new bridge. Caleb had become a little hero in the eyes of the villagers. Everyone who passed the bridge stopped, patted his head or shoulder, and smiled proudly. His mother, Martha, was quietly happy. In her heart, it seemed that the loss of the past had softened, filled with the light of her son. However, life in Whisper Creek was never peaceful for too long. In June, dark clouds began to roll in from the western mountains. The weather was hot, the wind was heavy with humidity and rain. Before the villagers could prepare for the harvest, fierce storms came.
One night, thunder rumbled. The sky was torn apart by a blinding flash of white lightning. Caleb woke up to the sound of rain drumming against the window. Snow howled softly.
Outside, the usually gentle stream roared like a wild beast. Mrs. Martha worried.
Caleb, the stream is rising. Stay inside.
But the boy couldn't stay still. He ran out onto the porch, his hair drenched in rain, and saw in the distance. The Whisper Bridge was shaking violently.
The muddy water carried branches, trash, and rubble.
The houses near the low banks were already starting to flood.
Oh my God, Caleb whispered.
In that moment he remembered everything. The days he had spent building the bridge with the villagers, the calloused hands that had helped him, the laughter, the meals shared by the fire. And he knew he couldn't stay still. Caleb put on his raincoat, called snow, and rushed out into the storm. The rain stung his face, the wind ripped his coat. When he reached the stream, he saw Mr. Harris and a few men trying to retie the bridge with ropes. Caleb, go home.
Monsieur Harris shouted over the Rhin.
I'll help, he shouted back, his voice trembling but determined. They worked frantically in the storm. The wind was blowing, the water rising to their knees, then their hips. Every plank, every rope felt like it could snap at any moment. Caleb and Snow ran back and forth, swinging ropes, throwing sandbags, sometimes falling flat on their faces but still getting up. There was a loud bang, a bridge pier collapsed, and the water swept away part of the railing. Mr. Harris slipped and was almost swept away, but Caleb rushed forward and grabbed his hand. They both fell flat on their faces, mud flying, but they still clung to each other. You did well, Caleb, Mr. Harris gasped, his eyes brimming with tears. This bridge, your father would be proud. That night, the stream flooded the village. Houses were flooded, barns were swept away. Martha, Mary, and the women took their children to the chapel on the hill, the only safe place. Caleb did not return. He and the men remained at the bridge, trying to hold on to each plank and rope. The water roared, trees fell, but in the chaos, the oil lamps they held burned, small but steadfast like a beacon of faith. Toward dawn, the rain began to ease.
The grey clouds parted.
When the first rays of sunlight filtered through the ravine, the villagers poured out, and everyone was stunned. The Whisper Bridge was still there. It was crooked, the ropes torn, but it still connected the two banks. Caleb sank to the ground, exhausted. Snow lay at his feet, breathing heavily. Mr. Harris hugged him, sobbing, saying,
You saved this village, Caleb.
That afternoon, the sky was unusually clear. The villagers worked together to repair the roof, clean up the mud. Martha hugged her son, tears falling into his hair. My son, you made me understand, sometimes miracles don't come from above. They come from the heart that stands firm in the storm. At night, the whole village gathered around a big fire. Children roasted corn, adults sang, and the sound of guitars echoed across the valley. Caleb sat next to Mr. Harris, watching the dancing flames, remembering his father. Dad, he said softly in his heart, I think I understand what you said. Miracles aren't what people see. They're what the heart feels, like this fire, like that bridge, like my Whisper Creek today. That night, a summer wind blew, carrying the scent of new grass and the chirping of crickets.
Countless stars twinkled in the sky.
Whisper Creek flowed gently again, reflecting the light like a small galaxy. And there, in the small village nestled in the mountains, the third miracle happened, not with magic, not with money, but with the courage and solidarity of ordinary people.
The morning sun shone through the mist, shimmering on the mud-covered roof. After the flood, Whisper Creek was strangely quiet. Only the soft chirping of birds and the gentle trickling of water.
The little village had changed. Not with new houses or wider roads, but with an invisible thread of compassion and faith, binding each villager together. 3 days after the flood, a small memorial service was held on the stream bank, right next to Whisper Bridge.
Villagers gathered in the pale yellow afternoon.
Everyone brought wildflowers, candles, and prayers. Mr. Harris wore an old shirt, his voice trembling as he spoke. We remember the dead, those who built this village with their hands, their sweat, and their hearts. Today, Whisper Creek still stands, because of their love. Everyone was silent. Martha squeezed Caleb's hand. He looked out at the stream, the water shimmering in the sunlight as if 1,000 stars were dancing. A gentle breeze blew.
The candle in the village en flickered, then all at once they all lit up brighter. A strange, warm, gentle light.
Everyone was stunned. Some burst into tears. It's like, someone is with us, Mary whispered. Caleb looked up. On the water, reflecting the shimmering light, he seemed to see the silhouette of a man, tall with wind-ruffled hair, a gentle face. His father. He wasn't scared. Instead, a feeling of peace filled his heart. He smiled softly, tears falling down his cheeks. Dad. I did it.
The silhouette faded, melting into the sunset, leaving the water calm and a flower floating gently in the stream.
That evening, the whole village gathered in front of Whisper Bridge. The bridge had been repaired, made stronger, more beautiful, and had a new wooden plaque engraved with the words, Whisper Bridge, dedicated to those who dare to believe in miracles.
Under the lights, children ran around, logging.
Adults sat drinking coffee, playing music and singing. No one spoke of fear, only of the hands that had weathered the storm together. Mrs. Martha looked at her son and said softly,
You know, Caleb, miracles don't come from far away.
They're in every act of kindness, every tear, every hug between people. Caleb nodded. He looked up at the sky, where the Milky Way stretched out and sparkled. The stream below reflected the stars, as if heaven and earth had become one. I think I understand, Mom. Miracles are when you keep believing in the good, no matter how hard life gets. Years passed, and Whisper Creek was reborn. The fields were green again, and Whisper Bridge became a gathering place for people. Visitors from faraway towns came by, heard the story of the boy who saved the village, and smiled, believing that there was magic here. Caleb grew up and became a construction engineer. But wherever he went, he always returned to that stream, where a small boy had stood firm in the storm and learned the greatest lesson of his life. Miracles are not what we see, they are what we sow in the hearts of others.
Late afternoon.
The wind carried the scent of young corn, the sound of windmills and laughter echoed from afar.
On Whisper Bridge, the sunset scattered like tangled flack.
Caleb sat on the railing, snow now old, lying obediently at his feet. He gently dropped a small stone into the stream.
The circle spread out, shimmering like heartbeat.
And there, in the midst of peace, he heard a whisper somewhere.
Miracle, still exist, sont.
Caleb smiled. The stream continued to flow, and life began again, peaceful, simple, but filled with all the wonder of man and nature.